The Mac Observer's Mac Geek Gab, episode 863 for Monday, March 29th, 2021. Greetings, folks, and welcome to the Mac Observer's Mac Geek Gab, the show where you send in your tips. We share your tips. You send in your questions. We answer your questions, or at least we try to. You send in your cool stuff found. We share that. We share our own cool stuff found. We share our own tips. The goal is for each of us, you, me, him, everybody here, to learn at least 5 new things every single time we get together. Sponsors for this episode include Otherworld Computing with their Thunderbolt dock. I know, generic name, specific product. We'll talk more about what that is a little bit later. And Amazon Pharmacy, where you can learn more at amazon.com/MGGRX, right? MGG, it's pretty good, right? And we'll talk a little bit about World Backup Day because that's happening this week. I believe it's happening on Wednesday of this week on March 31st. If that's incorrect, it doesn't matter. We're still going to talk about backups and dissect some of that this episode. So that's what's on the agenda here in Durham, New Hampshire. I'm Dave Hamilton.
And here in Fairfield, Connecticut, this is John F. Braun.
How you doing today, Mr. John F. Braun?
Fantastic.
Lantastic, even. Although we don't use Lantastic anymore, thank goodness. All right. Let's do this. Let's get into this. Let's start with some quick tips. You want to take us to Andrew, my friend?
Yes. So Andrew says, thank you for the show. Longtime listener, but usually several episodes behind. I recently found a solution that quickly resolved a problem on my 2019 iMac running Mojave. Yes, I like trailing edge macOS because it's stable. That's a good point. In recent weeks, I've been using a pair of Tozo T10 IPX8 Bluetooth earbuds on my iMac, primarily for privacy on Zoom calls. These earbuds provide good sound and mic quality for the price, and the case recharges via wireless charging. I also got their inexpensive wireless charger. Okay. And we got some links for those.
Yep.
It appears that using these earbuds confused my iMac's core audio function because I lost about 60% of my sound volume, both through my connected speakers and the iMac's internal speakers. A web search led me to this solution on... and we'll link to an article.
Okay.
There are several steps. I think the core step that kind of gets things back to normal is you do a sudo killall on coreaudiod, which is the audio process that handles audio. So.
Interesting. And what he lost 60% of his volume, and resetting coreaudiod fixed that. That's fascinating. Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, cool. We'll put that command, that sudo killall coreaudiod, in the show notes as well. That's I never even thought to do that. That seems dangerous to me, but obviously if he's been able to do it and it works, that's great. Huh. Mm-hmm. Fascinating. All right, cool. Thanks, Andrew. That's great. Cool. All right. Lou brings us a quick tip that fits right into World Backup Day. And that is that he says, let me get to where it is here. Oh, he says, when booting from a clone created by Carbon Copy Cloner, immediate connection to the internet can cause some issues that I just don't want to deal with. I don't want to be bothered by app updates and perhaps even some syncing I don't want to have happen. My fix was to create a shell script that turns Wi-Fi off before the backup process begins, and then another one that turns Wi-Fi back on after it completes. It works like a charm because Wi-Fi is off when I boot from the clone. So let's think about what he's done here. He turns Wi-Fi off on his Mac. He then has his Mac create the clone, and it's creating a clone of a Mac with Wi-Fi disabled. And then when Carbon Copy Cloner finishes, it turns Wi-Fi back on so that his Mac has Wi-Fi when he returns to it. Now, this only works if there's a couple of things are true. Number one is that the clone is happening when you're not using your Mac, or at least not using the internet. And then number two is that this happens when someone else isn't using something on your Mac. So your Mac isn't being used for file sharing or printer sharing or any of those types of things. But assuming those to be true, that's actually a great idea, because I've often had that issue where it's like, oh, I want to boot from a clone. Not so much in recent years. It hasn't been as much of an issue, but I've definitely had it in the past where it's like, oh, when I boot from the clone, pull the Ethernet cable or whatever that is. So, yeah, that's pretty good. What do you think about that, John?
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I like it.
Yeah. And I think Lou posted these in our forums, but we will put the commands in the forums if he has not. That's a great one. Thanks, Lou. I like it. All right, you want to take us to Gary, John?
Yes.
Awesome.
I was editing here, but let's go to there he is.
Great.
Gary.
Got him?
Yep. I just did a chat with William at Apple. My question was whether or not it was safe to charge an Apple Watch via the hockey puck charger, but using the USB port in my vehicle. He said yes. Good to know for a long road trip or camping in a rest area and needing to charge a watch.
It's good. Yeah. I see no
right.
reason. It's 5 volts, right? So as long as the charger in your vehicle is reliable, right? You got a problem with a aftermarket vehicle charger that blew up several devices of yours, right?
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
And when I opened it up, there was some chip that had actually had a hole burned out of it.
That's not good.
I'm going to guess it was the voltage regulator, and that's why it blew everything up, because I suspect it was feeding 12 volts, which is car voltage, versus 5 volts, which is what USB should be. At least USB-A should be only 5 volts. Of course, USB-C can be all sorts of different voltages, right?
It with power delivery, that's right. But usually that's negotiated. It starts at 5, and then we'll only send more if everyone agrees that it can take more. Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. Let's see. Listener Ben has a quick tip for us. He says, Eclectic Light posted a useful article last year about how to reset home folder permissions. Some related issues are Microsoft Office documents opening as read-only, and the inability to save Office documents in certain folders, or needing to authenticate in the Finder to move files, and even iCloud Drive failing to sync desktop and documents folders. All of these issues are wrapped up in corrupt home folder permissions. In prior versions of macOS, one could run disutil repair permissions in terminal via recovery, or reach an option to reset ACLs and other recovery areas. As of late versions of Catalina and, of course, beyond in Big Sur, the reset process has become even easier and doesn't require recovery mode at all. Instead, all you need to do is open terminal when logged in normally and run a disutil command, which, of course, we will put in the show notes so that you don't have to try and remember it when listening. But it's disutil reset user permissions, and then you set the ID with sort of a pass-through command. But it's all right there in the show notes. He says it shouldn't take long for the process to run, and then all of the issues above that he mentioned are instantly resolved. So thank you, Ben. I like it. That's good. I like that we're getting these things. I love the quick tips. That's a great, that one I got to save, because I'm not going to remember the command. None of us are, but that one we got to save somewhere. That's good. Cool. Hey, if you have a quick tip for us, or a question, or anything, send it to us. feedback@macgeekgab.com. We'd love to have it.
You heard him right. feedback@macgeekgab.com.
That is correct. Feedback@macgeekgab.com, John. I believe that's what we said. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We have some quick tips that come from prior episodes, John. Back in 862, we were talking about, Rob gave us a quick tip on how to set the audio output on an Apple TV by holding down the TV key and choosing it in the new control center. As Tim points out, that sets it for the present session. But to set a default audio output on your Apple TV, go to Settings, Video and Audio, Default Audio Output. This, in turn, can be temporarily overridden following Rob's suggestion with the control center, but the default will be unchanged the next time you go to watch TV. My default is to set it to my stereo pair of HomePods, but you know, he says he'll temporarily route the sound to his AirPods Pro if he wants to listen that way. Awesome. Thank you, Tim. That's great. It's nice to kind of put a button on that one. So yeah, it's good. I love the ongoing conversations. Like iterating on our knowledge base here is a good thing. So good. Yeah. Thoughts on that, John, before we move on to...
No, I'll have to mess with that. Not that I need to. I don't really have any output routing issues, but...
Sure. It's always good to know, like sometimes, because then, you know, you like you said, even if you don't have issues, knowing that these things exist when you're in that moment of like, oh, I really wish I could listen, for example, on my AirPods. It's like, wait, I know how to do that. I heard it on the show. So, or I read it on the show. There's times where it's like, wait, a listener told us how to do a thing. I know how to do it now. All right. Steve brings us something that probably is related to our upcoming backup conversation. He says, listening on last episode about troubleshooting and moving a Big Sur installation, Dave, you said, Dave and Mike from the show stated that you could boot the M1 Mac Mini from an external drive. I wasn't aware that you could boot an M1 from an external. And when I've tried to make bootable clones by selecting the source Macintosh HD, I was only able to clone the data volume on my M1 Macs. I wanted to find out what I was doing wrong so I won't get caught. So I emailed Mike Bombick at Carbon Copy Cloner to get clarification. And he says the Big Sur system volume can only be copied by Apple's ASR utility now, and that utility does not currently work on Apple Silicon Macs. Carbon Copy Cloner will automatically proceed with a data volume backup when backing those up. That's a complete backup of your data applications and system settings. Can you make a backup bootable though? Yes. If you would like to make that backup bootable, you can then install Big Sur onto the Carbon Copy Cloner data volume backup. So you do the clone first, it gets the data volume only, then you install Big Sur onto that. Please keep in mind, however, Mike says, that your Carbon Copy Cloner backup does not have to be bootable for you to be able to restore data from it. So that's important to remember. And Mike sort of goes on and says, this is Mike at Bombic Software with Carbon Copy Cloner. We envision a day when Apple won't allow the system volume to be copied at all, and possibly a day when Apple doesn't support external boot either. We have to adapt to Apple's changes every year, and we haven't dropped the ball on that adaptation in 20 years. This is the biggest change yet, and we're gearing up for our biggest change in response. As a Mac user, I'm not happy about losing a valuable troubleshooting option, but as a developer, I'm happy to be able to spend more time working on features that people want from their backups. And listener Steve, who sent that along, also sent along an article from Howard Oakley, also at Eclectic Light, which we referenced earlier in the show here, that booting from an M1 Mac is it possible? And he's got some notes about how that can be done too. So we'll put that link in the show notes. So thank you, Steve. That's great. Great stuff. It sort of makes sense. And I'm glad that it is doable from an external drive. I hope that remains. I hope Mike is wrong about that, but Mike is rarely wrong because Mike is often well informed. And so it might make sense that that's the direction Apple's heading in. Anyway, there you go. What do you think, John? Thoughts?
I had to make a bootable backup recently. So,
but you don't have an M1, right? You're just on a...
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But even with that, it said, oh, if you want this bootable, I got to do a couple of things. Is that okay?
Right.
So I do like that.
Yeah, that is normal.
CCC.
Right. Because it needs to create that system volume and move some things around. So that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Mike has a tip on a tip. Mike says, recently you had a tip about ejecting drives using Control Command E instead of Command E. And what that does, Command E will bring up, if you have multiple volumes on a drive, it will bring up that prompt that you might have seen that asks you, do you want to eject all disks or just the one you were on? He says, but that's a lot of keys to press. He says, so I built a very simple keyboard Maestro macro for use in the Finder only, which is a very cool thing about keyboard Maestro. You can compartmentalize its actions to specific apps only. And he says, now when I type Command E, it types Control Command E for me. So essentially what he did is he just built a hotkey command that only works when the Finder is in the front. And the hotkey is Command E. And what it does is it types a keystroke in response, which is Control Command E. So that way, when he does Command E in the Finder, it only ejects the volume that he has selected, and it doesn't prompt him about anything, which is kind of nice. So I like it. Thanks, Mike. That's good. I love these little tips. This is what I live for. I don't know. It's good. All right. Cliff has one last one from one of the recent episodes. He was having an issue where I guess we talked about this in a recent episode, where his external drive was just running constantly, and he asked, should he get an SSD or should he not? And he did some sleuthing with the LSOF command to figure out that it was related to his photos library. We made the assumption that it was related to the indexing of his photos library, and we recommended maybe AppTamer for, keeping that at bay. Well, Cliff wrote back and says, I think I solved my problem. I was doing some research, and some article made me think about Google Backup. Sure enough, I had that installed and didn't even know it. I found an article on how to clean it out of the system, and my external hard drive has been peaceful all day. So Google Backup will, I think by default, pull your photos library and back that up to Google. So, I mean, if you want that, then great. But in his case, it was causing him more harm than good. So yeah. So there you go. Thanks for that, Cliff. And Google Backup. That's it will do that. And again, that might not be a bad thing, but depending on how you're managing your photos library, it could be a problem. So, any thoughts on that, my friend, before we move on to the next things we have to do here?
Yeah, sometimes a backup of a backup isn't a bad idea, right?
Right. I think I think the problem here might be, I think Cliff has iCloud Photos library, right? So if he's got his iCloud Photos library syncing essentially that folder of stuff, and then also Google syncing that folder of stuff, it's possible that you've got these two things sort of fighting against each other. I don't know how he had the Google thing set or whatever, but, for example, iCloud Drive will not sync your Dropbox folder, right? Unless you really force it to, because that would be potentially create a never-ending loop of changes. So, yeah. All right. We have our World Backup Day conversation. We have some questions and things to get through. The next thing I want to do is tell you about our two sponsors, if that works for you, Mr. Braun.
Please do.
All right. Our first sponsor is one of our favorites. It is Otherworld Computing. And this week I get to talk about the OWC Thunderbolt dock. Yeah, I know. We talked about it in the show last week because it helped solve one of your problems, right? Like that's what we do here on the show is we recommend solutions. And that Thunderbolt dock that they've got. So I know they've had a few. So let me explain and make sure we all understand what this is. The OWC Thunderbolt dock, that's its name, has 4 Thunderbolt ports. So 1 upstream to your computer and then 3. So this is one of those things that can do the Thunderbolt hubbing that Big Sur brings to us Mac users, right? On top of that, it's got 4 USB ports as well as an SD card reader, gigabit Ethernet, and combo audio in and out. So with this Thunderbolt hubbing, with those 3 downstream Thunderbolt ports, you can connect a different dock or a drive without it, it will end that part of the chain, but you still got 2 others to use, which is making a huge difference for me here in the studio to be able to do this. This is what I've got here, and it makes a huge difference. You can just plug it all in and really reimagine that daisy chain. Plus, if you're on a laptop, that host port allows you to charge your notebook with 90 watts of power delivery. So you can charge it as fast as it's allowed to charge is really what it comes down to. And of course, those USB ports, you can charge through those too. Gigabit Ethernet, if you need that and you don't have it like on your laptop, well, boom, now you've got it. Very cool thing. And it's available. They've got them in stock now and you can order them. They are shipping. and they're just $249. So go check it out, macsales.com. Our thanks to Mac Sales for sponsoring this episode. Next up is Amazon Pharmacy. You've used Amazon Prime. I certainly have. And Amazon Prime works great. Things just get to me so fast. I mean, usually faster than I even expect. And I kind of expect a lot, but they over-deliver. It's fantastic. On top of that, now you've got your prescriptions through Amazon Pharmacy being delivered with Amazon Prime, because as an Amazon Prime member, we get free 2-day delivery, and we can save on our prescription medication when we're paying without insurance. But you can use your insurance too, and it's fantastic. You just send your prescriptions into them. You can even have your doctors send your prescriptions straight to them. And then that's it. You don't have to go to the pharmacy. You do it all with the very familiar Amazon interface, and you don't have to go out. It shows up. You don't have to think about it. It's fantastic. They've really figured out how to do this, and it's just simple, easy, and saves you time. So go check it out. Amazon Prime members can save on prescription medication when not using insurance and get free 2-day delivery. And you can learn more at amazon.com/MGGRX. That's amazon.com/MGGRX. Amazon.com/MGGRX. Our thanks to Amazon Pharmacy for sponsoring this episode. All right, let's talk backups, my friend. Let's so what I want to do, John, is let's share and dissect our current backup strategies and see if there's something we can improve upon for ourselves. And hopefully in that conversation, we will be able to help some folks out there dissect and improve upon their own. Of course, you can always tell us about yours and we can answer some questions about that. So shall I go first? You want to go first? How are we going to do this? I think you need to reset your thing. I think you are many seconds behind
right in
me.
Here.
Okay, so I will let you reset your connection to me here, John, because you're something happened with the audio between us. So John will be right back, and then we will do this, and we will have John dive right in as soon as he's back. Welcome back. So dive right in, my friend. Go.
All right. So 2 machines that I back up, MacBook Pro and Mac Mini, both have a 1 terabyte SSD.
Okay.
And they're both running Big Sur. So first thing for both, and actually I do the same thing on both machines, and I'm going to tell you what it is. Time machine. Time machine from one goes to one of my Synologies. Time machine from the other goes to the other Synology.
Okay.
So I distribute the backups. I also do a carbon copy cloner backup of both, doing different scheduling, more often on the Mini than on the MacBook Pro.
Sure.
But yeah, so I do that. Now, what I do with Time Machine, though, is that I will, so let me reiterate what I do there. On the MacBook Pro, because that's my daily driver, I'll have it set, do a backup when inactive, which you set with Time Machine Editor.
Okay.
On the Mac Mini, I actually schedule it to do it at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. And because there's something called Power Nap, it'll do that.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, sure.
All right. So carbon copy cloner, I went over that. Here's another one that may not be obvious. iCloud Drive.
Okay.
I have it set up where my desktop and documents is stored in iCloud Drive. So that is an offsite backup, if you will.
Yeah. Okay.
In the cloud. And then I also use Synology Drive. So Synology has a utility that'll sync content from your machine to a repository on the Synology. And I do that also on both machines. I used to use OneDrive for photos because they had a pretty good deal, but I was telling you I'm changing things. I actually took that off of the machines because I'm not using it anymore. At one point I did. It backed up my camera roll on my iOS device.
Okay.
But I use iCloud Photos, so I figure it's kind of redundant.
Sure.
Dropbox I'll use to like shuttle things back and forth every now and then. I used to back up my documents folder to that, but because iCloud Drive does it, I don't really do that anymore. But I still use it for scratch space when I want to move things. back and forth. Sometimes it's the easiest way to do it rather than like, putting it on a drive or something like that, or even file sharing. Synology has something called hyper backup. So here's the other thing that I do is I take all the data that I just described to you, and I hyper backup from one Synology all of the data and put it in a repository on the other one as well. So my Synologies are backing up to the other one.
Smart. Okay. No, that's smart. Yeah.
So it's really redundant. The only other thing I want to mention for backup is keep in mind your iDevices. Make sure backup is set up on your iDevices. It may not be. It'll yell at you if it can't do a backup to the cloud after like 2 weeks. And actually, that just happened with my iPad because the battery had run down. So it didn't.
Yep.
But remember your iDevices. So iDevices, I schedule both a backup to iCloud. I don't really do a manual one that often. And then iMazing, of course, I use that. So I have a redundant backup.
Okay. So you keep a cloud backup of your iDevices and then to Apple's cloud and then an iMazing backup to some local volume of your own.
Yes.
Got it.
And that's my gig.
So as I'm thinking about this, and I may have missed something, so forgive me, do you have a cloud backup of your Mac's data? Is that iCloud Drive? No, you don't. Okay. All right. Okay.
No, well, not the whole thing. The data, yes, because it's my documents folder, which is, so of course you got to put your documents in there.
Right.
Those get moved to the cloud, but no, I do not have a clone in the cloud, which I think is what you're asking.
No, I was asking about a clone in the cloud is almost useless because you can't boot from the cloud, right? So really it is just your data. So what you're doing with iCloud Drive. Now, it is important to at least acknowledge the distinction between backup and sync, as PJ in the chat room at live.macgeekgab.com points out. iCloud Drive is primarily a sync engine, not a backup engine. There are some versioning things that sort of happen with iCloud Drive, but if you were to manually delete something, that starts to get tricky to get back, right? Sync protects us from, I like to say that sync is good for fault tolerance. It's not necessarily so good for user error, where you intentionally or unintentionally delete something and then realize, oh, I want that back. So just folks, bear that in mind as you're kind of pulling that together. Yeah, that's good. Okay. I'm trying to think of anything else on yours. Well, we'll talk. I'll talk to you.
You actually bring up a good point in that each of these backup methods, to a certain degree, has some versioning.
Right.
I think it's just worth mentioning, and maybe I'm just rewording what you said, but Time Machine does, Carbon Copy Cloner kind of does.
If you turn on safety
they do
net.
have.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. iCloud Drive, I don't think really does any sort of versioning, but I believe you can typically recover things that were deleted if you do it through the web interface, usually, right?
Yes. There's some limited amount of time where that happens, but yes, that's right. That's right.
And then the other ones I mentioned, OneDrive, I don't know if it really does versioning. Dropbox definitely does.
Sure.
If you go through their web interface, you can look at things that have changed. So
yes, that's right.
Just something to consider is that at least one of your backup tools and also hyper backup on the Synology also does versioning as well.
That's right. Yep. That's right.
So
yeah, cool. All right. So let's see. Here in the studio, like you, I do Time Machine backup to Disk Station, and then a Carbon Copy Cloner clone to my OWC Envoy Pro EX, which is a Thunderbolt drive. And I highlight the type of drive because I think it's important. You need a Thunderbolt capable Mac of booting a Thunderbolt drive, right? When you're doing a clone. In the office, I do Time Machine to the Disk Station, carbon copy cloner to my a USB drive. It's actually a 4 terabyte Glyph Atom RAID SSD, and that way, you know, it's bootable on USB Macs too, which is good. On my iMac in the office, that's where I save full copies of my, or I sync down full copies of my music and photos library. So I do a nightly clone with Carbon Copy Cloner of my music library to a folder on my disk station. And that's so that Plex can see my music library in its, you know, unadulterated form. Plex then does its own indexing on that. I do a weekly copy of the originals folder inside my photos library. Say that 10 times fast, or perhaps even once. And that is, I do that to a folder on my disk station so that I can have Moments, which is the current photos management engine on the disk station, index my photos and do its thing with those. It's a little tricky. What I had to do, John, is you have to right click on your photos library and choose show package contents. And then from there is an originals or masters folder. It has changed over the years, but I then had to make an alias of that and pull that alias out to the root level of my hard drive. So essentially, on par with, or at the same level as the photos library itself. And then I could point Carbon Copy Cloner at that alias of the originals/masters folder. And that now, you know, pokes inside the library and only pulls the originals, not all of the thumbnails that Photos creates and all the other stuff that I don't want to sync over. But that works fairly well. And then I also use iCloud for photos and for my music library. So those are not only synced to my other Macs, but in theory, you know, stored in the cloud. On my M1 laptop, I am not doing a clone because of a lot of the reasons we just talked about earlier in the episode. I am doing Time Machine to a disk station, so I don't have a clone of that per se. But everything that's on there is synced. For my documents, I use Synology's Cloud Station. Oh, sorry, used to be Cloud Station. Now it's Synology Drive. So that keeps my documents synced amongst all of my Macs and my disk station. So thus far, I have talked about how I have copies of everything, but none of them so far have left my home or office. And that's bad because you want the cloud involved. So like you, John, I also use Hyper Backup to clone a lot of my data, including my movies library, from one disk station to another. Now they sit right on top of each other. So if one were to say, you know, melt in a fire, the other one would almost certainly melt in that fire. And then I take my important data on my Synology, which would include my Synology Drive, which has all of my files, my photos, but not my movies because it's just too big. And I back those up offsite to Synology C2 backup or cloud engine. But I could back those up to, you know, like Amazon Cloud or whatever you want. Like that's you know, totally doable with Hyper Backup. That it supports a lot of different things, but I just happen to be using Synology's engine. It seems to be the least expensive one for the amount of data that I'm backing up and how I'm backing up. I think it costs me, I want to say $60 or $70 a year for a terabyte, which isn't so bad. I think I have 2 terabytes with them. So, you know, so I'm paying whatever that is, $130, $140 a year or something like that. So the only thing I've been thinking of, John, is, you know, Time Machine routinely barfs up for me, you know, at least once a year, if not more. I'm needing to, you know, let it rebuild and et cetera, et cetera. Now, that was before Big Sur 11.1 when, and if you create a Time Machine backup with Big Sur after you have 11.1. So if you inherited a backup from Catalina or even an earlier, you know, 11.0 build of Big Sur, this is not the case. But if you create one fresh from 11.1 further, it will use APFS for the disk image that it's storing on your network volume. And maybe, certainly it's taking advantage of some of the snapshotting and things like that can happen with an APFS, which is great. Maybe it's more reliable. It hasn't been long enough since whatever, November, for me to say, yeah, it lasted a year, because it hasn't been a year. Might have felt like a year. It hasn't been a year. So, it's hard to say. I have been thinking for a while of using Arq from Haystack Software to back up to my disk station instead of Time Machine. It'll do all the versioning. It'll just save files out there. So I'm sort of wondering if maybe that's a better option, just because it's a little less, contained inside of the Apple box. So, when you go to restore from Time Machine, it takes a minute for it to like index things, and you got to deal with that crazy interface and all that. So I'm thinking about moving to Arq, and then of course, you can use Arq to back up to Amazon, Amazon's cloud or lots of other clouds too for your offsite backups as well. So I don't use Backblaze anymore, John. I used to, and I think my subscription expired or something, and I wound up not renewing it. I don't know that there was anything wrong with it, but I think it was at a time where I was fighting with some resource overutilization on my Mac, and thought, okay, well, let's strip out everything, including like Backblaze, which is going to just run all the time. And so, but obviously I sort of have that covered in different ways here. But yeah, my Synology is definitely at the core of my backup strategy here. I mean, I do have the clone drives that are just hanging off my various devices, but yeah, I don't know. So thoughts on that? What am I missing?
One last tip or one nuance.
Yeah.
Doing Time Machine on my MacBook Pro, I don't back everything up. And there's ways to exclude certain things.
Sure.
I will exclude the largest files, which at least in my world are either my photo library, which is like 140 gigs.
Right.
And also parallel virtual machines, which are typically on the order of tens of gigs.
Okay.
Because I found every now and then they're not too smart about how much of the file has changed. So and I haven't verified this in a while, but last I did, it was like taking forever. I'm like, I changed a little thing in this file. Why are you backing up the entire file?
Right. Huh.
I don't know if you have any knowledge about the nuances of that, but so I exclude pretty much anything that's over like 10. If it's in the tens or hundreds of gigs, then I typically exclude it from Time Machine.
That makes sense. I mean,
It's getting backed up other ways anyways.
Right. Yep. That makes sense. I like it. Yeah. In the chat room, Kiwi Graham says that he uses Arq to back up to his free OneDrive storage. So he has whatever their free, amount of cloud storage is. And he uses that as his cloud destination, and he uses Arq from Haystack to do it. Arq is spelled ARQ. Of course, we've got a link in the show notes for you, but there you go. Yeah. Interesting. Alex is asking you, John, in the chat room, how you back up your photos to the cloud. I think I know the answer, but I don't think you articulated it during your path. You use iCloud Photos, right?
No, I probably didn't. So it's part of my clones.
Right.
So when I do a CCC clone, that backs up everything on the drive, including the photo library.
Makes sense.
And then it's stored in the cloud
via iCloud Photos. Right. So
when on one machine, but no, it's a good question. You want to think you're right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Reset yourself. You're many seconds behind again. I'm curious. Did you? Well, I'll ask you when you get back. But this is good. Thanks, everybody. This has been excellent, for sure. Yeah, and you're right, Kiwi Graham, that Parallels used to have bands that would allow Time Machine to work better, but that's not the case anymore. So Yeah. John, I'm curious, had my audio dropped out for you, and did you do a reset of that? I'm curious what's causing these delays. Okay. So clearly, however you're resetting the audio is adding seconds to the delays now, which we'll have to report back. So yeah. So it resets it, but adds time, which doesn't surprise me, because if I reset your connection from here, it also adds time. So yeah. Okay. Good to know. All right. David. Well, all right. So I think we're good with our backup conversations. Obviously, I'm sure if we already had like 4 different things from the chat room, I know some of you listening have thoughts. So I know we said it before, but feedback at macgeekgab.com. Or if you're a Mac Geek Gab premium listener, premium at macgeekgab.com would be the place to send your comments. All right. Let's answer some questions, shall we? You want to do David, John?
Let's give it a shot. David says, I spoke too soon after leaving the computer on overnight, and the issue is back. What's the issue, you may ask? Well, he's going to tell us. To recap below, I have a 2017 27-inch, I'm going to assume iMac.
That would make sense.
Running Big Sur. The users on the login screen have moved from the center, which he spells the other way. Okay.
Doesn't matter.
The left-hand side of the login screen. No, it just caught my eye.
Got it.
Whenever I see spellings. Yeah, and he gave us a screenshot, and sure enough, both of the users on the machine are all the way on the left. I mean, it still looks like they're readable.
Readable and clickable. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of annoying. Although I cannot really live with this. Oh, wait. Clicking on either will slide them to the center of the screen for password entry and back again should I select the other user. Okay, so he can get in. All right.
Okay.
To try to correct this, I have reset the SMC and PRAM, installed additional accounts, A and Z, in an attempt to reset whatever P list is controlling this. This action. Finally, it made no difference. I reinstalled Big Sur. Yeah, well, sometimes, file in the OS can get corrupt. So, yeah, I've done that every now and then, and it's cleared up some things.
Yeah.
But it takes a while. Although I cannot really live with this, is there any suggestions you have to hopefully fix this? I haven't remained either account as you suggested within as both accounts have the same issue. I really don't want to make things worse. Okay. Let's see where to go here. Yeah, I mean, resetting, all those chips and reinstalling macOS. All I can think is safe mode. Safe mode sometimes clears up startup weirdness. I think it forces rebuild of certain things like that.
Sure.
Otherwise, Onyx.
Yeah.
It could be a cache, maybe like a system level cache or something. Maybe, or a system level P list, which I think, depending on what you choose in Onyx, it can clear those things up. The only one is that they do have a specific screen, Onyx parameters, and there are a couple that have to do, Dave, with the login window.
Really?
So, fiddle with and I think it's a radio button or some. So, choose them and then unchoose them and see if that reset. If anything is going to reset the P list for this, I would think that would.
Yeah. So. Interesting. Huh. That's, I would have said Onyx. That's a bizarre one. I haven't seen that. I'm trying to think of, why that would happen. And obviously it doesn't, it's not coming to me. So yeah. Yeah.
I mean, all I can imagine is is it getting confused about the size of the monitor? No, it's displaying.
Really. I mean, based on his screenshot, it's displaying things and knows the size. Like all the other buttons are where they should be. It's just, all of his user icons have shifted to the left. It's weird. Yeah. I wonder if there would be any like security reason for, I guess if they're always going to the same place, then no. I'm wondering if there's a security reason for having them move around so that you can't automate some like click here, type this, and, hack your way in. I mean, I don't think that's what's going on here. I'm just I'm spitballing, John, but I don't have an answer. So, All right. Andrew has a question about Time Machine. He says, is it necessary to use APFS formatted SSDs or hard drives for Time Machine backups, or is it just a matter of preference? Is there any advantage or disadvantage of using HFS Plus journaled instead of APFS for the destination drive connected to my Mac? So you can use either. But as we noted earlier, we have found that any Time Machine backups created fresh since 11.1, I think it's 11.1, have really been leveraging those snapshots and such. So there is an efficiency benefit, especially for direct attached drives. So yeah, if I were doing a Time Machine backup to a direct attached drive, I would definitely use APFS today, for sure. Yeah. But if you've got one and it's running HFS Plus and you're not upset with speed or anything, you can leave it. It's going to be okay. But if you need to create a new one, I would almost certainly recommend doing APFS for that. It will be way faster from what we've seen, because it's using snapshots and therefore getting through the initial sort of prep step way faster, because it's essentially letting the file system do its job, which is cool. That's, it's nice that that's sort of in there and thought of, which I like. So cool. You want to take us to Chris, John?
All right. Chris says, I've been using a Mac for 13 years now, and I have a very small annoyance that has nagged at me in every iteration of the OS. I work almost completely from the desktop. If it's on the desktop, it's something that needs to be done. A clean desktop for me is like my inbox zero. I use Quick Look and item info a lot as well to speed up things. Item info, which is a Command J, and then check show item info on my desktop only seems to refresh after a reboot. I can manually do this by turning it off, then back on again. Is there any way to get this to refresh itself? First on, I never thought of doing Command J and show item info to make something happen, but something does happen, not what I expected. The way I have it set up, it just showed additional info. In my case, like the dimensions of the pictures, because most of what's on my desktop are screenshots.
Sure.
Because that's where Apple puts them. The only thing I could think of, you may want to, I think you're going to have to give it a little nudge to update this. So it could be, one day if there's Finder, View, Cleanup Selection, or Cleanup By.
Okay.
So Cleanup will rearrange them. That's one option. Another one, actually, that I see, if you right-click, same thing. If you right-click on the desktop, it'll say Sort By, and you get all these different options here. Maybe do one of those.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the desktop, believe it or not, Dave, is actually a folder. So maybe going to the Finder and using that and listing that folder will show you the updated info, and you can use the Finder's criteria. Now, where is that, though, you ask? Well, at the desktop. And you choose that when you set up
an actual fix. There is an app from our friends over at Manytricks. I think of it as being built for when you need to present something and share your screen and you don't want people to have to see your messy desktop. And so Desktop Curtain will just hide all the clutter and show things and you're good to go. You can him answered. He said, greetings, gents. Somehow my will be attached to one Zoom feed. When we only have one microphone, but sound coming takes to know how to do this. So yes, absolutely. That solution is built right in to Mac OS. It is called aggregate audio devices. So what you do is, and the idea behind an aggregate audio device is exactly what it sounds like. You create one audio device that sources from multiple. So you are literally pulling them all together. And the way you would do it is you go into audio MIDI setup. I don't know, lost my train of thought there, which is in the applications utilities folder. And then in the lower left, you hit the plus sign and create an aggregate device. And then you check the use box next to all of the USB microphones you have. when you do that, one of them will not have, if you look on the right, this is important because things will get weird. When you have different audio devices, they are using their own clocks, system clocks, in terms of like pacing the audio. When you have multiple devices, you can't do multiple clocks because over time they will start to drift and things will get very, very strange. So there is a box for drift correction. Check that for all but one of your microphones. You want one microphone to sort of be the master, and then the others will get drift correction. Big Sur automatically checks the right drift correction boxes most of the time, but not all the time. Make sure of this. And there's some advice. The listener Devin sent in some, who is the creator of the app called Black Hole, which lets you sort of funnel audio in creative ways. It's sort of like Loopback, but free. And so he pointed out that if you set up a multi-output aggregate device with your headphones and things like that, you have to use your built-in audio as the first device. You can mute it. It's fine. But if you're having trouble, it needs to be a 2-channel device that you start with in this scenario. So that's the magic answer. You set up this aggregate device, it'll pull things together, and then you're good to go. So that should do it. And then what you do is once you've pulled all these together, you set that aggregate device as the input in Zoom. So you set that as your microphone, and then in theory, all should be well. At least that's the plan, John. I love that Apple does this stuff for us. So it's good. You can still hear me, right? Even though I've been messing with audio MIDI setup. Is that right, John?
Hello.
Hello. Thank you. Appreciate it. Cool. All right. Good. Okay.
Now, how's my sync? I had to reset audio, but I chose a different device to switch to and then switch back to the board.
I don't know. I think your sync is good. If you can hear me right now. Can you hear me right now?
Okay. I think the thing is what I was doing. So the suggestion of the developer was switch to another preview audio device and then switch back to the board.
Yeah.
I was switching to the Thunderbolt thing, which maybe wasn't the best choice because, it took a while to deal with it. This time I chose Mac Mini speakers, which, is right there.
Okay. And we are in sync. You can hear me right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. We're definitely in sync then. All right, good. All right, you found a solution. Excellent. Cool. Audio fun. And the fact that you can hear me answers my question as to whether I messed with audio hijack. So cool. Thank you, David, for that question. And thank you, Devin, for your assistance there. You want to take us to Joy, John?
Yes. Joy says Gmail is my email program. I use Apple Messages. Is there a way I can use one contract/address program that could be used by both Gmail and Apple Messages? I am currently using Google Contacts for Gmail and Apple Contacts for Apple Messages. I'm currently using Contact Sync to try and keep both in sync, but I keep getting duplicates and would like to find one contract address program that could be shared by Gmail and Apple Messages. Is there any hope? I'm not sure I have a really great answer, Dave. I only have a single address book, so I tried to replicate this. And as you probably know, so what I actually did is in internet accounts, one of mine is a Gmail account.
Sure.
My Mac Observer account. So for each of the accounts that you have, contacts can be one of the options. And in my case, it was only set for iCloud. So I set it for one of my Gmail accounts as well. What that does is makes it a new category in contacts or Apple Contacts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I tried that, and then when you have that ability in contacts, there are some options, like they have contacts card menu. In the contacts card menu, like link select cards. So maybe that would merge them properly for you, so you would have all the info in both places.
No, I don't think it puts it in both places. I think Apple contacts will see it, or things leveraging Apple contacts will see it, but things that are only looking at Google contacts, like on Google's end, I don't think it's actually syncing data between them. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that's just sort of merging them in terms of how it's presented to us, not in terms of all the data. I could be wrong though. But I think that's why contact sync exists. Which is what she mentioned. And I think it's this app from Playa Apps for $10 in the App Store, which, actually does that syncing of those things.
Yeah, the thing I didn't like in contacts is the interface isn't really good, because if I did have two cards highlighted, it wasn't clear to me which cloud they were in or which account they belonged to. It just didn't show it. Now, the good news, what you may want to try, you may want to try a better program like Busy Contacts. Now, Busy Contacts would access my same databases or contact databases, but it gave me more information when I try to highlight multiple cards and fiddle with them. So maybe give Busy Contacts a try. I mean, I could, because it's part of SetApp last I checked.
Sure, it is.
Searching for it on my machine and it showed up. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah. That might be the answer here. Contacts are weird. I have found, and this may well be something very specific with my contacts databases, but if I have more than one contacts engine like enabled, so Apple Contacts is fine and I would always have that enabled, but if I then enable, say, my Google Contacts or my Exchange contacts because I have an account at the university where I am teaching this class, then they have an LDAP server, so I can connect to that, which is super handy at times. But anytime I have more than just my Apple Contacts, I routinely see some address book sync engine running in the background at full clip, no matter how many CPU cores I have on my Mac. And it like, there's something going on there, and it seems not right. So I don't know if it's something about my Apple Contacts and the way that it, like you said, is trying to like intuit some mergeability of things. Maybe I have too many contacts. I don't know, but life is good if I only have one contacts and, one contact sync checked being Apple Contacts. If I add anything else, things get a little wonky for me. So, yeah, I don't know. Alex also says, go to the contacts app, go to the card menu and look for duplicates. I wound up doing that, and that helped clean things out for sure.
Yes.
For me. Yeah. Paul Franz has an interesting thought for her, John. Is there any reason she could not just enable Google Contacts and disable Apple's contacts? That way her devices would and she would need to do this on each device she owns, but that way everything she does with contacts would only be syncing to Google Contacts, and therefore anything she does on Google's side would see all her up-to-date changes. And of course, all of her Apple devices would see up-to-date changes because they're only looking at Google Contacts. That's a very interesting thought for Paul Franz. Thank you. That's probably the right answer for her. If Google Contacts are sort of a necessary part of her workflow, why not just standardize on that and that alone? Maybe that's the simple answer. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer for me was I only have one database.
Right. That's the
suggestion. Is there any way you can have a single authoritative database?
Yeah. And, I like it.
And you would think it's an easy problem, and it sounds like this, sync program is trying to deal with it.
Yeah.
She makes mention that they have some settings that say you may not want to use them or they're going to destroy everything. And
sure.
That was another suspicion. But no, it's at some point, I think you got to do. I mean, it's unpleasant usually. I did this recently where I had tons of duplicates because in the past you could link Apple's address book to LinkedIn and Facebook and all that stuff, and it left those entries behind at some point. So I had like tons of duplicates, and one day I just went through it and I'm like, you know what, just find all the duplicates. And I had to do like multiple runs.
Yes,
because like you said, it tries to do its best when merging or removing duplicates, and sometimes it has trouble because you got to run it again.
Yeah, I know. I found I had to run it like 4 or 5 times before it was like, okay, yeah, I'm not finding anything. It's like, okay, great. Before you do that, you want to make a backup of your contacts database, and you do that by, and I'm opening contacts with trepidation because it always seems to like to do a lot of things when I open it. But if you launch contacts, go to the file menu, do export, and do a contacts archive. That is the best way to do a backup of contacts, in my experience. You certainly Time Machine and any other backup that you're doing that includes your home folder will grab your contacts, but that backup is the easiest from which I've found to restore, which is sort of the key of the backups. So, yeah. Cool. And Pastor T at live.macgeekgab.com also says that he uses one. I'm assuming Pastor T is a he. My apologies if you are not. But Pastor T uses just one contacts database, and it is just Google. And that makes life easier. I like this idea. Yeah, that's right. And Pastor T says this also works for calendar data too. You can not use Apple's calendar sync. You can use Google's only, and all your Apple devices will be totally happy with this. Just turn that syncing off and you're fine. They speak Google very, very well. So yeah, it's good. Cool. I like this. All right, we have time for a couple of cool stuffs found, maybe more than a couple, John. I will start with one that fits into our World Backup Day conversation, and this is from Stefan of Haystack Software, the founder of that, and the person who is at least the chief programmer on ARQ Backup. ARQ Backup is how we say that. He says we're adding an immutable backup feature to our to ARQ. He says, with ransomware attacks on the rise, immutable backup provides real protection by preventing attackers from deleting your backups. He says, I think it's unique in the marketplace. It brings an enterprise feature, Object Lock, to a consumer-priced backup app, and we hope to be shipping it by World Backup Day, which is on March 31st. So thanks. A, thanks for the confirmation of the question I asked at the beginning of the show. And B, this is fantastic. Yeah, and he's got a blog post about some Object Lock. And I think we're actually going to have him write something a little more in depth for us at Mac Observer too. So thank you for that, Stefan. Very, very cool stuff found indeed. John, you want to take us to Simon on your cool stuff found list?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, is immutable the same as non-fungible?
I think no. I mean, sort of, but no. That's right.
Yeah, maybe intent into grammar, whatever.
Yes.
What am I looking? Who am I looking for here?
I think you're looking for Simon. If
yeah, there he is.
If okay. life tells me anything. So yeah, go ahead, man.
Mm-mm. I just want to let you know about something really cool for bedroom charging. If you have bought a new iPhone and used the MagSafe charger, you can now have it built into your table or nightstand using this simple 3D printed schematic. I Googled MagSafe flush mount and found the design on Thingiverse.com. I then found a 3D printer company that does one-offs and uploaded the design. About 10 pounds later, I had the plastic ring that allowed my MagSafe to sit in my bedside table. It's really tidy and also no light, so I can sleep well when my phone is charging safely. Plus, I won't knock my phone off in the middle of the night. You can use an IKEA drill set, and it fits where my old IKEA Qi pad was. Okay, cool.
That's pretty cool. I like this idea. That's excellent. Yeah. So it just fits right in the little grommet hole there. Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Smart. Yeah, I've seen some others, or when some companies were showing Qi chargers, I remember them. One proposal was, "Hey, we'll put it in the table, like in a hotel room."
Sure.
That would be handy. And maybe some hotels do. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Cool. Fun.
If and when we go to hotels ever again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we will. I think that glimmer I occasionally see on the horizon, John, I think is the light at the end of the tunnel. I am hopeful that that's actually happening. So it seems like, vaccines are even easier and easier to get. It seems like that's going to be our path out of it, especially here in the U.S., which is it's nice to see things moving forward. So.
Yeah, I'm still fishing.
But, you're still fishing. Yeah, I've heard Connecticut is tricky to get an appointment for sure, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Well, there's multiple systems, unfortunately. But you gave me a board that a Facebook group that tries to point you in the right direction.
Yeah,
I guess letting you know as soon as these guys just announced.
Right.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, that was one of those things we mentioned a couple episodes ago. There was an article that we linked to about, figuring out your, where you can get vaccine appointments in your state. And they gave many tips. We shared a couple of them, but one of them that we didn't share that it seems like is helpful, at least for a lot of folks down your way, John, in Connecticut, is Facebook groups that do exactly this. So, yeah. And bookmarking the pages that you need to visit so that you can just pull them all up in one fell swoop. If you do a bookmark group in Safari, which is a bookmark folder, I guess, you can put that in your favorites bar, and then you can say open in new tabs, and that will open all of those pages at once in new tabs. So I've used that for years. This is okay. So now we're getting into different tip realm here, but I've used those bookmark tabs groups for years for things like I do it for all my personal finance stuff, so that I know that I can just go through and this will get me to, Amex for my cards there and Citibank for my accounts there and Discover and, maybe some of my retirement accounts or the college saving plan. And it's just like all at once, everything's open and I can just go through each one when I do my finances once a month and it's all just right there. I don't need to remember where to go. They're in a group and I open it and it's done. And when I'm finished, I know I'm at the end and I'm good to go. I also have one, I've got a bunch of smart switches in the house, John. And so I use a bookmark tab folder for those. And when I want to see my switches, I just say boom and it pulls them all up and their web interfaces are there and I can just switch around, which is handy. So, use them for your vaccination sites if you've got multiples so that you can pull them all up and, go through. Mm-hmm. So, yep. All right. I have a review of sorts as a cool stuff found. This is from Solo, New York. It's a case, and I've really liked their stuff over the years. They last. They look good, and this is the Ludlow Universal Tablet Sling. It says that it's small. The padded compartment there is built to hold tablets up to 12.9 inches. I can fit my MacBook Air in this thing, which is the same. Mine is the M1 Air, but same form factor as the 2018 and 2019 Airs. So that fits in there, and then it's got two zippered compartments on the front. One that's got some organizational stuff in it for your pens and your chapstick and whatever. And then another zippered pocket that for just your charger and things like that you can easily fit in there. It's got it's a sling. So it's got a thing that can go over your shoulders. Super lightweight. It does not have a water bottle pouch. But obviously it's built to be small. So it makes sense that it would not have that. But for me, when I'm going to teach my class at UNH here, this is a perfect thing because I don't need to lug all my crap with me. I just need my laptop, my USB dock so that I can plug into, the owl and the TVs in the room so that people can see whatever I want to show them. And it's available on Amazon. It's inexpensive at $27, and you can get it in a couple of different colors. So yeah, anyway, that's my new favorite little thing. So yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. Hey, one last cool stuff found. I'm going to try and sneak it in here, John, if that's okay. Unless you have any questions about the tablet Sling or anything like that. Okay.
Go.
I went to South by Southwest recently, John. And, like that meant I did it over Zoom, or I used their connected app on my TV to watch movies and sessions, which they really, in fact, that was really, really well done. And there was this thing that I got to check out called Space Explorers, which is the ISS experience. And they had a couple of previews of this. They have put together 360 immersive this immersive experience, which you can do with all types of different VR vehicles, including like the Google Cardboard, or if you've got an Oculus, like, you can, it all works. So you can do it with your phone if that's your best bet, or you can do it with something else. And it really puts you in the International Space Station. It's very, very cool stuff, the way that they've put all this together. And they had a little movie and a session about how they had put all this together. And then they let us sort of experience some of these previews. So I will put a link in the show notes to an article about this too, so that you can kind of follow the path and mess with it when it becomes available for all of us. So, yeah. So this is the stuff I love about South by Southwest, and I was glad to be able to get to do some of that this time. I'm looking forward to actually attending in person again next year, but there you go. So.
Yeah, actually, I got to go through my emails. I think there's a Synology thing coming up, and I think there's a Showstoppers.
Okay.
Was it a Showstoppers or one of the other?
Sure.
Yeah.
Those are in person or in person?
No.
Okay.
They're all virtual.
Virtual, remote at the moment. I don't like to use the term virtual for these things. Because we have been a remote company for years, and I definitely don't think of us as a virtual company, because we don't pay virtual taxes. We pay very real taxes, So until the government lets me pay virtual taxes, I'm not calling any of this stuff virtual. It's remote. Right. That's just me hacking my own brain. So, that's how I go. Cool. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, folks. This was a fun one. They're all fun, but yeah, it's good.
Hopefully the ISS experience didn't let you experience space junk colliding with it.
I had no space junk to speak of. No, that's right. Yeah.
Good.
Always good in that.
Now, I don't know if I heard a thing on, I saw a show the other day when they were talking about a company that is going to be building a platform to retrieve space junk. Apparently, there's lots of space junk out there.
There is lots of space junk. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well,
something flying at you at several thousand miles an hour could be a bummer.
Could pose a problem.
The ISS.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's not really built with defensive shields, to my knowledge. So, yeah. Hey, I
think they had an incident a while ago, but anyways, go.
No. It's all good. This is what we do. We're nerds. We talk about stuff that nerds like. But I want to take a minute. I mentioned our premium at macgeekgab.com email address earlier in the show, and I want to talk about our premium program. Specifically, I want to thank those of you whose contributions to our premium program have come in the last couple of weeks here. And you can learn more about it at macgeekgab.com/premium. It is not mandatory. It is definitely, optional. But it is very much appreciated and a huge part of our, structure here that lets us do the things that we do, and we appreciate it. So thanking all of you whose subscriptions have come in. Pierre Timo, thanks so much. Gary from Babylon, Abel from Santa Rosa, Peter from Auburn, Bob, Dr. Mac from Austin, James from San Antonio, Abdullah from Reisterstown, David from Chicago, Ari from Kensington, Joe from Redondo Beach, Michael from Littleton, Timothy from West Windsor, Nick from Mount Clemens, Domenico from Holbrook, Graham from Glebe, Bob from Lepeche, Brian from Danbury, Santiago from Palm City, John from Wake Forest, Paul from Lee, Dimitri from Moscow, Ken from Kailua, of course, Ken from Kailua, Craig from Costa Mesa, William from Gettsville, Kevin from Edison, Erica from Netcong, Juliet from Alexandria, Michael from Robbins, Larry from West Bloomfield, Matthew from Forked River, Chris from Chorleywood, Andrew from Honolulu, Jeff from Chesterton, Royce from Ewa Beach, Bill from Duxbury, Fernando from I'm not sure where, David from Owensboro, James from Melville, Joseph from Marietta, Bryn from Sun City, Michael from Spencer, Robert from Columbiana, Stephen from Plainfield, Dave from Saugerties, John from Vienna, Robbie from Hendersonville, Sharon from Wesley Chapel, Frank from Tunbridge, and Randy from Westport. Thanks to all of you for all of that, and really just for all that you each do. You are all rock stars in our book, so thanks so much. If you want to do something else for us, leave us a review. Go to macgeekgab.com/reviews. That's as close as we can get you, and we would love to have you review the show or update your review if it's been more than 6 months since you did your last one. You got anything for them, John? Anything to ask of them, to share? Maybe a place they can find us?
Hey, there's always Twitter, right?
There is.
And we're on Twitter, are we? He is Dave Hamilton. I am John F. Braun. The podcast is Mac Geek Gab. The publication is Mac Observer. And there's also Pilot Pete, who... We're going to get Pilot Pete back in the studio. Must be doing a lot of piloting these days.
He is.
Because we haven't seen it.
Yeah, Pilot Pete's got his own plane in addition to the planes that he flies for somebody else. So, yeah. It's good.
Yeah, if you got a quick one, Twitter's good for that.
It is.
In addition to obtaining all sorts of useful and 100% accurate information, I've found.
That's right. Twitter is fantastic for that. The information you get from us is, we try to make it 100% accurate. And if not, we will correct ourselves, or we will allow you to correct us. It's sort of how it goes, kind of like we do in the show here. So thanks so much for listening, everybody. Hope you have a fantastic week. I hope you are able to get your vaccines whenever that it can happen, as quickly as that can happen, really. If you are offered one, take it, please. Move it forward. That's my request of you. Thanks to our sponsors, of course, Otherworld Computing and Amazon.com/MGGRX. You can learn about the rest of our sponsors at macgeekgab.com/sponsors. John, any advice for them before we send everyone on their way?
Oh, I always have advice. And sometimes it's actually pretty useful. And the advice that I have for all of you is don't get caught.
Made on a Mac.
All right, cool. I'm glad you found that Thunderbolt versus not Thunderbolt thing. That's really, tell Oliver about that. That's really interesting.